Hello, today is June 13th, 2024. I'm Tony Mangino from TC2, and this is Staying Connected. On today's podcast, I'm joined by my colleague, Ben Fox. Ben is one of the managing directors here at TC2, and we're going to discuss the holy grail of IT outsourcing, deals and service providers that genuinely deliver innovation. So, Ben, this was your idea. Why don't you tee this up?
Hi, Tony. Yes, it was. So pretty much all the IT outsourcing initiatives and procurements that I've worked on over many, many years have had at some level an objective for something more, if you will. So not just the elementary objectives of outsourcing IT functions or of taking advantage of offshoring or new tooling and seeking consistent ITIL processes, but perhaps a desire for transformation or a desire for deep automation or a desire for innovation that will all deliver real radical change and step change improvements in the delivery of IT service and support and big changes, improvements in end user experience.
Well, that all sounds wonderful. I'm sure vendor sales teams love that.
Well, yeah, but don't they? I think they go mad for this stuff, really. So I've heard so many versions of transformation is in our company's DNA, and we're a firm of 200,000 entrepreneurs, and, we've already identified the 40% of your tickets that will be completely automated in the first year. And, all that sounds really great. And of course, it's just what customers want to hear and are kind of seeking out. And I would say that suppliers universally present very strong propositions in those areas and, discuss examples of where they've delivered success for other customers, and which I fully believe they have.
Well, it sounds like there's a but coming.
Yeah, so the but is that we've got many clients that engage with suppliers, at least in part due to those kind of promises. But then a few years later, they've been extremely underwhelmed by the level of transformation or automation or innovation, etc., that has actually been delivered. And that's obviously a big failing.
Absolutely. So is the problem that things were oversold in the first place?
I think there's a bit of that going on, or perhaps putting it a little more generously, the sales pitch was a bit aspirational. I think sometimes there is a bit too much of a leap of faith from suppliers regarding these things. Things perhaps look easier when written down in a proposal, of course, than they do when it actually comes time to implement. But I think there are a few other root cause issues too. So for instance, one of the things that seems to happen is simply that the work of delivering the base outsourced services and functions ends up being more taxing on the supplier than expected. And that sucks up all of the supplier's focus and resources, at least at first, and sometimes for quite a while. And so any transformational and innovation efforts really take a necessary back seat, if you will, to simply keeping the lights on. I think also pretty much all new outsourcing deals have teething problems here up front, and some more than others. And often simply resolving and overcoming those problems ends up putting the planned efforts to automate or transfer or what have you on the back burner. Not least when the customer pretty clearly tells the supplier that they've got to get their house in order completely before even thinking about trying any advanced transformation work or some other more complex innovation.
Okay, I can see why customers get frustrated then, especially when there were cost savings expected from the automation and transformation outcomes.
Well, yeah, but as it happens, often in these outsourcing deals, the financial upsides of the automations and transformations or what have you that the supplier promised, that's all built into the deal pricing. So prices that are guaranteed by the supplier to go down year over year, in light of, for instance, automation work that the supplier committed to deliver, that's very common in IT outsourcing deals. So as a result, the customer often gets at least part of the financial upside, kind of regardless of whether or not those automations or whatever are actually delivered by the supplier. So that obviously takes the edge off the supplier's delivery difficulties, for the customer at least, and also supports customers taking the perfectly rational and fair position that the base service delivery must be prioritized over and above the supplier's automation and transformation work.
So if the supplier's taking it on the chin financially, so to speak, then I can imagine that might cause different problems.
Yes, absolutely. I think what can happen in the most problematic cases is the expected automations or transformations, or whatever it may be, don't get delivered, or only partially delivered, or severely delayed. And then the supplier's business case for the deal requires it to reduce its staffing model to support those guaranteed year-over-year price reductions that I was talking about. But the supplier staffing reductions were based on the efficiencies that the innovation was meant to have delivered. So now the supplier is trying to deliver without enough personnel because the efficiencies haven't been achieved, which means delivery may not be 100%, bringing us right back to square one in terms of having to focus everything on keeping the service delivery lights on, and still, therefore, not being able to deliver the expected innovation and transformation. in effect, everything becomes stuck in a rut that it's just very hard to get out of.
You're not painting a very rosy picture here, Ben.
Well, you're right. I'm not. And as you know, Tony, I'm a really big proponent of outsourcing when it's done right. So I suppose let me get to my point, which I've kind of come to over time, which is that you can't really outsource innovation as such. It's essentially going about delivering the innovation the wrong way. I think true innovation in IT services needs to be a joint role between the customer and the supplier. And if all the responsibility to provide innovation resides with the supplier, then all the problems we've talked about can very easily prevent any innovation being delivered. So as a further example of how outsourcing innovation doesn't work, I've spoken with customers that complain that their supplier never presents any innovation. But then when you speak with that supplier, they complain that they have proposed various innovation proposals to the customer, and the customer has turned them all down, or said the time is not right, or said they have other priorities right now. So after a while, the supplier just gives up proposing anything, and hence why the customer says the supplier never proposes any innovation. It's just another vicious circle.
Okay, so what's the solution?
Well, where I've seen more successful innovation is when the customer is the driving force, if you will, behind the innovation. So for instance, in terms of defining what it is and how it will be delivered. Yeah, and the customer may leverage, often does leverage, a supplier partner to deliver the specific tasks necessary to achieve the innovation. But the intellectual ownership, if you will, of the innovation is with the customer. And I think when that is the case, the innovation is simply far more likely to be successful. So when the supplier is the intellectual owner of innovation, it doesn't necessarily mean that the innovation is not viable or is not a good idea. But in my experience, customers are far less likely to get behind supplier-driven innovation initiatives. They can be easy to say no to, in effect. But customers are typically very enthusiastic and supportive for innovation activities that are internally driven and where the customer is the intellectual owner of the innovation. That doesn't mean that suppliers shouldn't be consulted or shouldn't be a partner in identifying and designing and implementing innovation. It simply means you can't kind of leave it all to the supplier. You cannot outsource the innovation. And then over and above that really important concept, I believe, of the customer being the intellectual owner of innovation and providing the driving force to kind of get it done. A complementary approach that I've seen to be very, very helpful is having a clearly identified, kind of almost ring-fenced team on the supplier side that is responsible for executing and supporting the customer-sponsored innovation activities. I think that can help significantly with the issue we talked about of the supplier not following through on the innovation list because it's simply completely focused on business as usual delivery work.
Thanks very much, Ben. Great discussion today. And if you would like to learn more about IT outsourcing deals, or if you'd like to discuss other ICT needs with Ben or me or any of our LB3 and TC2 colleagues, please give us a call or shoot us an email. You can also stay current by subscribing to Staying Connected, checking out our websites, and by following us on LinkedIn.